Ever wonder how similar neurons are to a football team? Us too. We're the Dream Team, and today we'll be discussing each part of the neuron, their structure, and function. For this video, we'll be going in-depth in our explanations and relating each to an essential part of every football team.
We begin at the top of the team, the dendrites. This area of the neuron functions like the head coach of the football team. They receive the signals, process the signals, and then transfer that information to the rest of the team. In this case, the cell body. The incoming signals, chemical or electrical, can either be excitatory, indicating to make the neuron fire, or inhibitory, indicating to prevent the neuron from firing. Consider this aspect comparable to an aggressive or conservative play call on offense. It is entirely based on the signals fed to the head coach. More visually, dendrites resemble the branches of a tree in the sense that they extend from the cell body of the neuron and open up into gradually smaller projections. As seen, dendrites are capable of receiving many input signals throughout their dendritic trees, which refer to the branching out of the nerve fibers at the end of the neuron. One neuron can have many sets of dendrites while receiving many input signals. The neuron's decision to fire is totally based upon the sum of all excitatory and inhibitory signals it receives. Thus, if the neuron does proceed to fire, the dendrites conduct the action potential through the cell body down the axon.
Before the signal reaches the axon, it must first traverse the cell body. The cell body of the neuron, also called the soma, compared to other portions of the cell, is the largest and appears spherical under a microscope. The cell body connects the branch-like dendrites to the axon, as well as containing the nucleus, which is the source of most of the RNA produced in neurons. While being a major site for metabolic activity, it is most importantly the site of synthesis for almost all neuronal proteins and membranes, most important of which is the production of neurotransmitters. Thus, it does not play an active role in transmission, but maintains the cell and keeps it functional. Like the general managers for each football team, they provide a major structural role in ensuring the construction of the team.
The axon is a long, slender projection of a neuron that is specialized for the conduction of a particular type of electrical impulse, action potentials, away from the cell body toward the axon terminal. Compared to the highly branched dendrites, each neuron has a single axon that extends and branches at the end. The axon also contains special insulating substances known as myelin that will be discussed in detail later on. During an action potential, there are sudden membrane depolarizations followed by rapid repolarization across the plasma membrane. It begins at the axon hillock, the junction of the axon and cell body, and moves towards the axon terminus. The axon functions like the offensive coordinator who receives the information from the head coach and then conducts the signal to the rest of the offense.
Although they are not part of the neuron, glial cells provide necessary protection for neurons by producing myelin as well as removing unwanted materials like debris and pathogens. These glial cells produce myelin, a fatty substance that wraps the axon. This myelin sheath is vital in producing near instantaneous and strong signals from the axon hillock to the axon terminal. However, this sheath is not continuous. Rather, there are breaks called nodes of Ranvier along the axon. These nodes have a great concentration of ion channels that help with propelling the electrical signal across the neuron. There are also specialized glial cells called astrocytes that provide structural support for the neuron as well as monitor neuronal activity. Astrocytes, in tandem with the myelin sheath and nodes of Ranvier, help make neurons work as well as they do. Without these, not only would neuronal signals take significantly longer, neurons would also be much more fragile and prone to damage. Think of these parts as the offensive line in football, as they protect the quarterback, which is the electrical signal, from anything outside of the neuron and ensure the signal runs smoothly across the axon. And located at the most distal part of the axon, the main purpose of the axon terminal is to convert the electrical signal back into a chemical signal that can be released into the synapse. Within the axon terminal, there's a process of packaging neurotransmitters into vesicles, docking the vesicle on the membrane, fusing with the membrane, and finally releasing the neurotransmitter into the synapse. The axon terminal is what allows for the vast network of neurons because the chemical signals are released to other neurons. In terms of football, the axon terminal is like skilled offense executing play calls because it ensures the play or the neurotransmitter was released successfully.
In review, in a simplistic manner, the neuron functions in a similar way to a football team. The general manager ensures the composition of the team similarly to the cell body. The head coach receives signals from his staff, as with dendrites. The head coach transmits the signal to the offensive coordinator, or the axon. The signal is protected by the O-line, or the myelin covering the axon, and finally, the joint group of skilled offensive, the quarterback, wide receivers, and running back, work to conduct the signal as the axon terminal would. It is most important to remember that without each component, the team cannot function.
We hope that you guys learned a little bit more about the composition of a neuron. Be sure to hit that like button if you want to see more cool neuron content from us.